Robert, can you hear us?
Does it sound, the quality is okay? You can hear us clearly?
The quality's fine. It's not as good as it was with the with the microphone, but I mean, it's fine.
Okay, passable.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want a flower?
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I'm so glad I got sick yesterday so I can be here today. I was supposed to be flying to Mexico today.
Yeah, yeah, you wouldn't want to miss this morning.
No, I would have missed it. I would have been on the plane right now. I'm flying tomorrow instead. I feel good today.
That's good.
Good, I'm glad you're feeling better,
You
Robert.
won't get this stomach thing that everybody has. Oh, is it bad?
Yeah. Flu.
Okay, we don't want to hear the details.
That's all I'm going to say.
Do you have the flu, Robert?
There's a thing that like half the Green Bay Packers have this. There's this thing rifling through Wisconsin that's like a one-day stomach bug.
The introductions, Roshi, would you like me to? Yeah, you can click it.
Say something brief about us, 2 characters, Gavin and Costello.
Not totally the center here. No, they do it.
You gotta zoom in on us.
Maybe Kathy, should I switch your eye over the touch? There you go.
There's the thing on that screen.
Yeah, we can get rid of that. You're judging multiple.
Is there a way you can pin the screen?
Breakout room closing in 10 seconds. Welcome back, everyone. Good morning. So you got a 1 or 2 more logging on. Great. Thank you. Yeah, sure. Good morning and welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your time in the breakout rooms. I'm very pleased and excited to announce this morning's Dharma talk.
It's not a Dharma talk.
But it's called Sangha Conversation, right?
Oh, yeah, that's different.
So it's not at all a Dharma talk. It is more a Sangha conversation.
Yeah.
And it is with our very own Abbot Roshi, Robert Joshin Althouse, and Reverend Diane Myogetsu Beijing. Thank you.
Someone is,
Off mute.
yeah,
Okay. I just silenced them anyway.
okay. So good morning, everyone. We're having some technical sound difficulties this morning, but we're improvising, which is what we do in Zen. We just improvise. We go by the seat of our pants and try to make it look like we know what we're doing. But we really don't. And, I'm very happy to be here with Shuso, Reverend Myogetsu, who is our Shuso for Ango, and our Ango is almost ending. And we thought we would just take a Sunday to have a conversation with you about our Zen Center, how we practice here, and have Shuso say some words about how it's been for her. The Shuso is the head trainee of the Ango. And our Ango is it's a 3-month training that we do. It's the way that we do Zen training here at our center. And it's a more intensified way of practicing together. And there's a head trainee, the Shuso. Shuso means head trainee, and Myogetsu has done that. And I'll just say something brief and then let Shuso talk. But one of the things I'd like to talk about this morning is the nature of hierarchy, because we have, you can think of hierarchies, social hierarchies can be really unjust. You know, you have power at the top, or people that are very, very wealthy, and then people at the bottom that are disenfranchised and don't have power. And that kind of hierarchy, we have every right to feel is not helpful. But I'd like to talk a little later this morning about how we understand hierarchy at our Zen Center, because we have hierarchy here, but I don't think it's the same kind of hierarchy we associate with injustice. It's a kind of, it has to do with the sacred nature of our world, which is hierarchical. But I'll say more about that. So a sacred hierarchy is power that's shared with the interrelated parts. Every part is actively participating, and the power doesn't come just from the top. So just as an example, and I'll talk about this more specifically, we have different positions at our Zen Center that are hierarchical. As you train as a Zen student, you take on more responsibility, and you take on more responsibility as a leader. As you can see with Myogetsu, she is kind of reluctantly taken on this role, because I had to kind of push her into it, and she's doing very well. And so when she graduates as Shuso at the end of our training period in 2 weeks, there'll be a big Shuso Hosen ceremony, Dharma combat. And it's really scary for the Shuso. I've been through it. I know. Sensei's been through it. That's what a rite of passage is supposed to be. It's supposed to scare the living tar out of you, because then you pass. You pass through it, and it's really a rite of passage. You've earned something, and you've embodied it, and the Sangha community has witnessed it. So the empowerment comes partly from the top. In our tradition, the teacher tells someone, works with someone, and at some point the teacher gives them an empowerment title, like a Shuso, or a sensei, or a Roshi. These are all words that have a specific meaning in terms of our hierarchy. And each one is an empowerment to have more responsibility and more leadership, using power with. And much of our training in mentoring in the White Plum tradition is how we work with power. And the teacher is working with the students all the time. And all of us don't always use power. There's nothing matter with power. Power is a natural part of our social systems, but it's how we use it. So if when we're going through our training, if you have more power and you get inflated with the power, then you start misusing it. You're not using it so skillfully, and it's the role of the teacher to work with the student, just to point out that they're inflated and they're abusing that power in some way, and so then they correct it. So we are always learning in our tradition how to have power with each other. So the empowerment doesn't just come from the top. It does, it comes from the teacher, but it also comes from the bottom. In other words, Myogetsu is empowered from me to be a Shuso, because I asked her to be that. But when she graduates as Shuso in 2 weeks, you already know this, she's also empowered from you. You have given her empowerment because you love the teaching if you've been to any of the teachings that Myogetsu's done, and when you hear her speak in a minute and I shut up, you will see why she has also got empowerment from the Sangha community. The empowerment always has to have both sides, and if it's just from the top, then it doesn't work. Do you understand what I'm saying? And all of our empowerments are like that. I'm the abbot, but I'm only the abbot here because you let me be the abbot. If I started acting really crazy, the board of directors would they would pull the plug on the abbot and get rid of me. That's part of how our system works. Well, I'm going to shut up and let Myogetsu talk a little bit, and then we'll come back to this a little bit, maybe.
Thank you, Roshi. Can people online hear? Okay. Well, thank you. And I guess I like what Roshi just said, that I was the reluctant Shuso. When I had my first conversation with Roshi 3+ months ago to take on this position, while I recognized deeply what an honor and a privilege it was to do that, I was also concerned about my load in life and, working full time for the most part, having family, having many, many responsibilities. And my initial thought was, how do you do it all? And the second time so the first time around, I said to Roshi, I don't think I can balance everything and do the role of Shuso true justice, which I knew it was an increased responsibility, teaching and coming into the center every day for temple rounds, officiating at services, working with Roshi in Doksan. And I thought, how on earth can I do this without taking a break from work or attending to my family and to some medical needs that I have? So the first time I said, no, I don't think I can handle all of those responsibilities and do a good job and really be of service to the Sangha. And so I kind of sat with it a little bit. And then the second time Roshi and I had the conversation, I sort of was reminded of, if not now, when? And we just finished in Ango, we just finished our Lojong training. And Lojong is training of the mind, to open the heart to compassion, to open the mind to the true nature of reality. And I had to really take a huge bite of humble pie and realize that we will never have perfect conditions to engage in spiritual training. We have what we have. And we either make use of that in the most skillful, beneficial way, or we don't. And so one of the Lojong, thank you very much. One of the Lojong statements that we just studied last week was, this time, get it right. And so what does this time mean? It means right now, this lifetime. We're not guaranteed days and weeks and months and years. We don't know how short our life is. If not now, when? Because as you all know, I'm deeply dedicated to Dharma practice. It fills my body and soul, quite honestly. And so it moved me when I spoke with Roshi the second time to really, and I had to sit with it and I had to do some reflection, can I do this and really be of service and really be of service to all of you, to be of service to Roshi and Sensei, to the Zendo, and still maintain my private clinical practice and my marriage. So I thought, I'll never know until I do it. Right? I'll never know until I do it. And so as I've been doing it, I must say that it's been giving me great delight. It's not without challenges. There are days when it's really cold and I'm up at 5:30 meeting Benji here at the center to do temple rounds before the morning sit. And I think, I sure would like to stay at home and have another cup of coffee. But there's something transformative about our spiritual practices. And this intense training period that we've all been on, there's a transformative power in giving to others, caring for the Dharma in a way that maybe goes against the grain of our comfort and the grain of our selfishness. Because part of what Dharma practice teaches us is just how self-preoccupied we can be. And if we're truly interested in being of benefit to others, one of the things we chant today, the Bodhisattva vow, beings are, creations are numberless, I vow to save them. And I think, well, how on earth can we save everyone if we're not thinking about them? If we're only thinking about ourselves, we won't find the depths of our Dharma practice, our energy, our love, our kindness, our commitment. So I am truly grateful that Roshi very kindly asked twice.
I think it was 3 times.
I'm truly grateful. It's been a powerful, powerful experience. It has been wonderful working with Benji. As you know, Kaido comes in every time I do temple rounds to assist me, is in for the teachings, for the sittings. All of you that have been attending Ango classes, that have been studying Lojong together, you know, there is something about recognizing the profundity and the power of the 3 treasures, the 3 jewels. You know, of course we rely on Buddha, on our teachers. And, you know, Lojong also teaches this, you know, practice the 3 principal causes. One is we recognize we need teachers at the growing development of our spiritual practice. Our Roshi, our sensei, teachers that maybe we have from other lineages in our books. But we also need to recognize that Sangha is huge in our spiritual development. Like-minded others that are interested in trimming back the repetitive habits of body, speech, and mind, and working together to develop a society that we all feel good about, that can help others. So I think we recognize that Mahayana Buddhism, and our lineage is a Mahayana path. Mahayana Buddhism gives us an opportunity to look at the power of a peaceful vision for our world. We can develop kindness, compassion towards others, towards all others, towards ourselves as well. So it's, those of you that studied Lojong know that our point 4 was make practice your whole life. There is no distinction between I'm practicing now and then I'm going to go home and eat lunch. Practice is our whole life. There is no separation. And it was one of the realizations that I came to when I was compartmentalizing my work responsibilities, family responsibilities, pet responsibilities, et cetera, recognizing there is no separation. It's all our practice. And it gives us this opportunity when we come to the Zendo and sit with each other, when we study with a teacher, with Roshi or Sensei, and we study formally to learn the precepts and to study and work with koans, when we enter Ango periods, which gives us great opportunity to deepen our spiritual aspiration, our intention. Because our spiritual intention develops into a spiritual commitment and develops into a spiritual vow, but we never feel separated from it. It's simply what we do, and it's simply the right thing to do. That's how strong it has to transform our life. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to be Shuso. And quite honestly, at the beginning, you know, when you think 3 months, wow, that's a long time to disrupt the routine of my life. But it has been so enjoyable and so meaningful. And I truly feel the transformative power of spiritual practice. And being here with all of you is equally transformative. Sitting with Roshi and Sensei, equally transformative. It's amazing if we open our heart and mind and say yes and take the plunge. So I'll give it back to Roshi, but I think when the question comes towards any of you, will you be Shuso? Don't wait for the 3rd time. The 3rd time is the charm. But say yes. Say yes wholeheartedly. Say yes with love. Say yes with compassion, and say yes for your fellow Sangha. That's the other piece that I recognize, that it's not just about me. It's really about all of us. And it's really about caring for the Dharma in a way that, that changes our world. It changes our small worlds, and that can change our big world. So, thank you.
Oh. Thank you, Shuso. One of the things we do in Ango is we call each other by our role. So she's Shuso, and Kaido is Benji. So instead of saying Diane or Liz, if we're in Ango, and this is a very Japanese thing, you just say, Benji, could you help me do this? Or Shuso, would you give a talk next Sunday, or something? And that's a very Japanese thing. You're identified with your role, not your personality so much. And that's actually pretty cool. But I think that just the one thing I want to say, and then I want to open this up for a conversation. I gave a talk last week about modern Zen, and I do think we don't need to be bashful about being Zen practitioners. We don't necessarily need to proselytize, but I think a good thing to do is to proclaim the Dharma with some confidence that we know what we're talking about. And I think the whole thing here, when we talk about Dharma, is we're just talking about the nature of the world as a sacred reality, that our world is sacred. And one way that gets framed in terms of very old Chinese teachings from Chinese medicine and Taoism is through the three aspects of heaven, earth, and man. Or you might call them three principles. That there's the principle of heaven, which is open and spacious and vast with no boundaries, has to do with ideals, but inspires us. And then there's the practicality of the earth, down to earth, the practicality. And the earth can be cultivated by being in relationship to heaven. You think heaven is something kind of dry, but actually the heaven brings rain to the earth. So the earth can be cultivated. The heavens bring warmth to the plants so that they can grow. So there's this relationship between heaven and earth. Heaven is a kind of a hierarchy in the sense of earth. But that hierarchy is also built into everything in our world, that natural hierarchy. Our bodies have a natural hierarchy. Our prefrontal cortex does higher functions than the rest of our brain. Does that mean it's better than the rest of our brain? No, not better. It's a natural hierarchy. There's more complexity in our prefrontal cortex than in our brainstem. But we need them both. We couldn't live without our brain stems, but we need this prefrontal cortex so we can reflect on our lives. It's really important. So there's that natural hierarchy which runs throughout nature, and the Chinese would frame that as a yang and yin. The yang is the active force in nature, and the yin is the receptive. And these two movements, and the early Chinese that developed Chinese medicine, they were natural empiricists, natural scientists, because they observed their world very carefully. They had very sophisticated systems of astronomy, and the whole thing was connected for them. They viewed the whole world and the universe as breath. That the Chinese were interested in patterns of change. And so what they saw, no matter what level they were looking at, whether they were looking at the biosphere or the cosmos, was the movement of breath, of yin and yang. It's going back and forth. And so that hierarchy is in the natural world of heaven and earth. And then we're in the middle somewhere. And it's our role to be simple and to be in accord with heaven and earth. And so the idea in ancient China, they called it, what did they call it? There was a word for it, it escapes me now, but the idea was that if we aren't in accord with the natural world, then we bring about in our social world chaos, which is exactly what's happening in our world today. We are not in harmony and balance with our natural world, with our ecosystems. We're living far beyond our means as a species. And so if we're out of balance with heaven and earth, then there will be out of balance in our social human world as well. And that idea ran throughout. It was called the mandate of heaven. And we don't have kings and emperors in our culture, but they did in China and Japan. And they had this not unreasonable view that if the crops were all growing and everything was thriving, that the king was genuine, because it was up the king. The character for king is these three things: for heaven, earth, man, being in harmony. And if the kingdom wasn't in harmony, if there were weather disasters happening, they actually felt there was some relationship between that and the king not being genuine. Now, we would have a hard time subscribing to that, but you kind of get the idea that one way to view our world is the Dharma is that it's sacred. And it's sacred because it's harmonious and it has these relationships that all work, of heaven and earth and man. So when we do Ongo here, when we practice here at the center, and we say trust the Dharma or love the Dharma, we're just saying love the world that we're in, love this world, because it's sacred. We're woven into this world. We're not apart from it. And so when you walk into this Buddha hall, you have a feeling of walking in. You're not walking into a living room. You're walking into a meditation hall where you're all practicing together, and you feel that sacredness in this space, don't you? All the people that have practiced here, you feel it when you walk into the space. It's magic. It's something you can't put your finger on. If you walk into my office, you'll feel something very different. So that's what I wanted to say. That and when we did the first Ongo, I think we even did it this Ongo. We made the recommendation that you treat your own home as a temple too. That Ongo would be a way for you to really work with your family and your secular domestic situation as if it was you were a temple, and to treat it as such, and to treat your domestic affairs as sacred, which is what Myogetsu just said so beautifully, that everything we do is practice. You bring it home. And so the idea here is that we're a kind of a, I don't know, we're a reservoir of goodness, and through all of your generosity and your energy to do this practice together. Another word for Sangha just means harmony. When we're in accord with the Dharma, or the Chinese would call the Tao, which is essentially being in accord with the sacred nature of reality, then things go well. They just go well. And hierarchy is part of that. It's a natural hierarchy, not a contrived hierarchy based on power from above, but a natural hierarchy based on, in a organic system, there are things that become more complex, and things that are and then things that are subsets of that. And I think that's how nature self-organizes. And I like to think of the Zen Center as being something like that. So that maybe I said enough, and it'd be nice to have some conversation about this. Anything that interests you, or questions you have about the Zen Center, or some of the roles, or.
Could we speak for a moment, maybe each of you, on the winter session, just a little bit about what that practice is, or what that is like, or I know there were some questions around that.
What do you know what the questions are?
Just looking for more information or more.
You want to talk?
research around that.
Get to-
So the opportunity to practice together during sesshin is which is kind of a uniting of body and mind, and that's what we're trying to do, right? We learned about this in our Lojong mind training, that we're trying to practice the three inseparables, meaning we keep our body, speech, and mind in sync, so that our thoughts and our speech and our body is reflecting our heart, our true nature. So sesshin gives an opportunity to step out of the busyness, or what we learned the last several weeks, the seductions of samsara, because there's so many, aren't there? We can spend so much time. I had an opportunity over Thanksgiving. You know, my great niece, who's 11 years old, is literally tied to her phone. Well, not literally, but you can see that it's extremely important to her. And that distraction is truly a distraction, isn't it? You're not working on generosity, you're not working on patience, you're not working on kindness, you're not working on compassion when you're so overly distracted. And so sesshin gives us an opportunity for 7 days to come together as a spiritual community and to sit with each other, to work with each other, to eat together in silence. It's done in silence because speech is another distraction, isn't it? Eye contact is a distraction. So Roshi and Sensei gracefully offer sesshin 3 times a year, and offer it in a way that you can do it part-time. You can do it in the morning, you can do it in the evening. But if you've never had an opportunity to practice deeply, really encourage you to think about joining this winter retreat. It's just an amazing way to begin to deepen your own aspiration, to enliven your aspiration and your intention. Because remember, the path is joyful. It's not supposed to be, oh my God, 7 days of pure misery. I mean, it's a joyful path. It really is. There's so much that we can encounter within, and as we come together as a Sangha, that if you have any interest, or if you've even been giving a little bit of thought to, gee, I wonder what it's like, take the plunge and do it. It's amazing.
Yeah, one of the dangers of sesshin is you might become too happy. No, that's the truth. It's about the,
Yeah.
If you're in the 7-day sesshin, there's a point in the sesshin where we start getting really silly and kind of exuberant. And we have to actually, the teacher has to remind everyone to keep the discipline so that we can hold ourselves in the container and go all the way through and even go deeper, because we get distracted by our silliness too. But I've never heard more laughter in the Sangha community than when we're doing Ango trainings and we're working really hard, we're training hard, and there's just a lot of laughter too. So as Myogetsu said, sesshin is about unifying the mind and heart, and the word sesshin comes from 2 Japanese characters, setsu, shin. Shin means heart, and setsu means to unify. Well, shin means mind, heart. And setsu, the first character, means to unify the mind, heart. So what we're doing in sesshin is becoming intimate. Intimate with ourselves, intimate with each other, which is, we all long for this. Not intimate with this, but intimate with each other. Put this down and find that we are in a sacred world already. It's here, and to appreciate this intimacy in our world is, there's nothing better. That's the cat's meow. There's nothing better than that. And that's what sesshin is really about, is taking a backward step back from your routines and put yourself in this other routine, this container of a retreat. And it's a container because it has a schedule and you have to follow it, and you can't cheat. If you're here, you have to do the schedule, even if you don't want to. And there's a lot of times when you don't want to do it. But because you've committed, you've made the choice. It's a choiceless choice. It's kind of like practice. If you've made a commitment to do this practice, and when you wake up in the morning, you don't have to make the choice whether you're going to go sit or not. You've already made the choice. And it's so much easier that way than if I had to make the choice every morning when I got up. I would choose to not go to sit much of the time. I do something. I go get that extra cup of coffee. So I think there's something really wonderful about the container, and we create that here at the center. And you can do it on your own, but I've done it on my own, but it's much harder. It's so much easier when we do it together. And then we are inspired by each other too. And then you start noticing very subtle things, how someone walks in, how you walk into a room. It communicates volumes to everyone else. We're always communicating things that we're not even aware of, and we become very sensitive and subtle and open-hearted to each other in sesshin. And it's I don't think I know anything else like it. I've been doing the most of my life. After the first one I did in early 70s, I swore I'd never do one again. 50 years later, I'm still doing them. The first one was really rough. So, any questions about any of that? Or the center? What are you concerned about? What are you thinking about? You'd have to pass the computer.
I don't know if we need to or not. Earl, try to say something and see if we can hear you.
Yeah,
take it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talking about hierarchy brought something to mind which I really hadn't expected. We've been watching, my wife and I have been watching a show called The Extraordinary Attorney Wu, which is set in South Korea. And one of the things that really struck me was, so this is a young girl practicing law, and she's going to see her boss. So her boss is in this big room. So she goes to the door and boom, boom, boom. Okay. And the word is then come.
Mhm.
She opens the door, goes in, and she gets in front of him and she bows. That's something I never thought of doing to my boss. Never. I mean, I still probably don't, because we don't here in this country act that way. We don't have this kind of reference. I don't know. So I'm just disappointed that I just never felt that I should do that.
Yeah. Yeah, bowing is a wonderful practice. It's a way of showing respect. And when you really bow to someone that's an authority as such, you find that you have that authority within yourself. That's kind of how the empowerment works, is when you surrender to, you don't give your power away to someone above you, your boss, but you acknowledge with respect their responsibility and their role as they do yours. It's a mutual respect. But then when you really truly bow to them, you're really bowing to yourself, and you're also bowing to your capacity to be them. It's odd how that works, but you kind of, after my Zumi Roshi died, I had a lot of sadness about his death and loss. And over the years, it's hard to put it into words, but I just felt like I had him in my bones somehow. I think that's kind of how the empowerments go. You love your teacher, or you love your boss even, if they're worth, if they earn it, if they have wisdom and they're mentoring you in some way, then we love our mentors. Mentors are people that love us. And if you truly give yourself to that relationship, you get back, you become the mentor. I think that's how it works. So, I feel really emotional just talking about it. Thank you. Anything else? You don't ask a question, I'm going to start talking again. Or Myogetsu, maybe you should say something.
Well, I was really touched by Earl's question because when I first started my practice in Buddhism, I was with another tradition, and making prostrations and bowing was a very significant part of the practice. And there's a mindfulness about not, that we're also developing humility in the aspect of making a prostration or bowing, that we're saying, we're seeing the Buddha nature of who is in front of us, no matter who that is, whether it's teacher, whether it's someone walking down the street. We're sort of saying, it's not about just me. And there is something very reverential and very reciprocal in our capacity to be with another and to show that respect and that love and that kindness. And so the practice of bowing, when it's done sincerely, I think we all know what it's like to do things without the heart behind it, and it can become a little bit superficial or stiff. But I think that's what Dharma practice is helping us to do, is to bring things in sync so that our hearts, when they're open, our speech is kind, our bodily actions are about serving others, that there's a synchronicity. And initially we might bow because it's simply part of the structure, part of the liturgy, part of the practice, until we start to feel something moving very deeply inside our heart that makes it very genuine and makes it very heartfelt. But it's a very profound practice. And a bit foreign in our culture. You're absolutely right, Carl. It's not something that we do.
I was also wondering if maybe either of you could speak to the Shuso ceremony that is coming up in 2 weeks or so. I would love for everyone to join and be there and have some background around what we'll be experiencing then.
Thank you, Junmei. Yeah, that's good. So we are finishing the Ango with the Shuso Hosen ceremony on the Sunday after the session ends on Saturday. And that is we encourage everyone in Ango to participate. If you're in Ango, I will come ask you to participate. And if you say no, I'll ask you again. And if you say no a second time, I'll probably ask you a third time and try to get you on a list of people that are going to come up. Shuso is going to give a short Dharma talk, 10 minutes. I remember Maizumi Roshi said, Joshin, you got to make your Dharma talk really short. So that's the first rule. The Shuso has to give a short Dharma talk on a koan she's been working with now. She'll be working with from now until the end of the session. And she'll give a talk on that. And then any of you can come up and challenge her. This is kind of scary, you go up in public and, you're going to make a fool of yourself. Everyone's afraid of this, but it's actually just really inspiring to see that people can be brave and go up and risk something. And she's being brave. She's sitting in the hot seat. Oh my gosh, that's scary. She has to give a talk and then answer, and then we call it Dharma combat. I'm not sure that's exactly the right word. It sounds, but it's a kind of Dharma. People are coming up and testing her understanding, which means you have to have some understanding to be testing her. But no one loses in this. This is not a zero-sum game. Everyone wins in the end.
Can you give an example of like what a challenge would be?
Oh, God, you just put me on the hot seat.
We're asking Michael,
Yeah.
why, I can't even remember now, but something about intimacy, why is intimacy with self so important? So it's just a question from the learnings around Dharma.
Yeah.
Or of what you've just shared, right? You just come back and ask you a question.
You'll have the whole session to think of your question. You can rehearse it if you want, and in the mirror or something, to see if you look good when you ask it. Or you can be really, wait and listen to her talk, and then have a question come up right on the spot and come up and ask her it. And then we encourage you to have some dialogue. Don't just go away with your tail between your legs after she gives you an answer. Stay there and ask a second question that you didn't know you had, but now you have it. That's the nature of the practice. And it takes some courage to do that. None of us, we're all kind of scared about looking like a fool in public. But I tell you, the first time when I did this, and I was at Zen Mountain Center, it was 1994. I was in a cabin at the monastery, and I was in the session, and I had all these books, sutras and things, and I was writing. I wrote like a 12-page Dharma talk, and the day before, I go into I'm all confused. I'm kind of like really uptight about having to do this, I'm studying everything so that everyone will, I have to know something. I get into the Buddha hall and we're chanting the Heart Sutra, and I just broke down. I was like sobbing. It's like the whole thing was just totally useless, totally hopeless. If I had torn up my notes the night before, I said, this isn't what I want to talk about. This isn't coming from my heart. I'm just trying to look good to people. So I tore them up, and then I was like, and then the teacher told me, Joshin, just trust me. And then I gave a pretty good talk, at least passable. So that's kind of the nature of this, and I encourage you all to participate. And if you're scared, that's okay. That's part of the. If it seems scary, then it'll have more. What's the word? It'll be richer for you if you work with your fear and you stay and you come and you see everyone else being brave, and then you can be braver because other people might risk being vulnerable, and then you can do it too. It's this kind of scary thing, but it's beautiful. That's what a rite of passage is supposed to be. Yeah.
And it's a rite of passage to.
Yes, thank you. So when the Shuso graduates as Shuso, they become, in terms of our hierarchy, they become known as a senior student. So they are on the way to becoming they are on the teacher training path. And Myogetsu is a priest in training here, but she is also on a teacher training path. One of the reasons she's on a teacher training path is because she's naturally a teacher. And you know this from being with her. She doesn't have to, it's not forced. She's not trying to, she didn't even want to do this. I had to twist her arm. That's always a good sign. She was really reluctant. But she did. And now you all know that she's a teacher because you've gotten something that she said that's valuable. So she will become a senior student. And then that means that I will probably ask her if she has time to start doing private interviews so that you can come see her and talk about your practice. It's not a formal relationship with a Zen teacher yet, but she's on her way to becoming a Zen teacher. And so that's what it means to be a senior student. They're on a teacher training path, and they're taking on more responsibility as a result too. Now, we also have Zen Life teachers, so it's a little confusing. We have different kinds of empowerment, so to speak, but people that have done training to be Zen Life instructors are empowered to teach the core curriculum of the foundations of mindfulness and the path of liberation. They're not Zen teachers. We call them Zen Life instructors. They're teaching mindfulness for the most part. So we have the two primary training paths in our tradition, at least the way we do it here at the Zen Center, is a priest training path and a teacher training path. You can be on both, or you can be on one or the other. You could be a priest and never become a teacher. Priests are supposed to serve the Sangha. They're supposed to carry on the Dharma through their example of living the precepts. So they're sort of teaching by how they live their lives. And they do priestly functions. For services and rituals, they could conduct memorial services or weddings, things like that. Priests can do pastoral counseling with people. So we have a priest training path, and you could be on a priest training path and never become a teacher. You don't want, that's fine. You're in service to the Sangha as a priest, full, dedicated to the Sangha. And then the teacher training path is also a separate training path. You could train here to become a Zen teacher if that was your intention. And if that was your intention, you'd be studying with Sensei or me, and you would say that I want to get off at that train stop where you become a Zen teacher. That's where I want to get off. You have to know that. That's what you want. It doesn't just happen. This is takes a lot of work, a lot of work to be a Zen teacher. You have to want that. Doesn't matter with wanting it. And if you want that, then you tell your teacher, that's the train stop I want to get off, and then the teacher will start to pay attention to that and work with you and encourage you to so that maybe it's years and years of training, and then you could become a Zen teacher and never be a priest. You could be a lay teacher in our tradition. And I'm hoping that sometime in the future that will happen, because then it'll make things a little clearer. I think people are confused about priests. I'm confused about priests, and I'm one. I don't even, but we hold priests up to a very high standard in our culture. There's a lot of projections that get put on priests. So we have, and you could be both. You could be a priest and a Zen teacher, which is the common way that it's done in many Zen lineages. In the San Francisco Zen lineage, you cannot be a teacher without being a priest. But in our lineage, especially with Bernie, we started, I was working with Bernie very closely. Bernie started separating out the two, which upset people in Japan, but Bernie had Zen students that were in other religious traditions. Father Kennedy, Jesuit Catholic priest. Why should he become a Buddhist priest? He doesn't need to become a Buddhist. He's already a priest in his own tradition. So Bernie said he's just going to become a lay, he'll become a Zen teacher as a Catholic priest. And he doesn't need to be a Buddhist priest because he's already a priest in his own tradition. Why should he do both? So that's how we started to pull apart these two training paths. And people don't usually understand that about our center, that we have these two paths. And you don't have to be on either one of these paths you can be a Zen student and never become a Zen teacher or a priest, and it's perfectly fine. You're a householder, you take care of your family. That's the main part of our tradition. But it's useful to understand that we do have these hierarchies and training paths. So when you become a a Zen teacher and you have transmission, as I gave Michael a few months ago, you get the title of sensei. And sensei means you're an empowered Zen teacher. And then maybe 10 years after that, your teacher is watching you, how you behave as a sensei. And at some point, they give you a final approval, kind of the final seal of approval as a Zen teacher, and they give you the title of Roshi, which is what I was given from my teacher. And that means that you're free to do whatever you want. Break all the rules if that's what you want to do. So, hey, Susan, hi.
Oh, can't hear her. Okay, go ahead, Susan.
Now can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I was listening in because I can't do technology very well, but I heard Roshi, I felt you get emotional about your teacher. And I thank you. And I want to log in saying that Myogetsu, you are the real deal. And I am so thrilled to hear about this. You've been my teacher too, along the way. And my teacher once told me to tear up my notes. And I had been such a good girl and I had stacks of notes. And he said, tear up your notes. And I was horrified and thought I would tear them up and take them to Thatcher Woods and make a mandala, but then they weren't rice paper, so that wouldn't have worked. But Myogetsu, you certainly don't need any notes. And, you know, I'll tune out. I mean, I'll close. I just want to say I'm so thrilled. And thank you for the explanation about how things work. I've never understood it, but I have understood, Roshi, that you answer to no one and can do whatever you want.
Well,
Except for the sensei you live with.
yeah, no, that's it. Okay, yeah. Did June pay you some money before the?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Roshi and Sensei and Shuso and Sangha. I really appreciate beginning to understand that every minute, every breath is my practice. Joining you with COVID, and how wonderful is that? That I can join you with COVID. I'm just grateful that I've taken really good care of myself along the way so that I'm able to be, with you while I'm unwell. And I just also, it's an honor, to be part of Ango. And I wanted to thank everyone in the Sangha because for the last year or so during our service, everyone has been carrying my Aunt Myra Riley, her name, in our prayers for good health. And she did pass away just the day before Thanksgiving. And it was just so touching and sweet that all of us carried her into the prayers and chanting of those who have passed on. And just how lovely is that, that this family, this Sangha here is just able to honor her. And I know that I'm going to continue to hear her name in service. And I think that's just part of what we do and what is so lovely about the Sangha and tradition. And I just want to thank Sensei and Kelly because I gave them that information just before service and they were able to make that transitional change. And it was just lovely to do that with all of you and hear that. And thank you so much, Myogetsu, for everything. Oh, Shuso. Yeah.
Jackie, sorry to hear you have COVID. So take good care. You're now on our sick list. Get well. Jackie and Patrick show up every morning and commit to sit, and they're down in, where are you anyway? In Alabama? Florida?
we're actually in Florida now, yeah, to deal with, you know, the services, and we were able to see my aunt the last week before she passed. So just, you know, so many blessings. But yep, it's all because we can show up here and practice.
So it's 10:59, so that means time to close. I want to thank you all for participating this morning, and thank you, Shuso, for guiding us through the Sangha, as you have with so much heart. Yeah. So, and thank you, all of you, for being a part of this community. We do this all together. And so thank you. And I guess we're gonna now have fellowship hour for those of us that are here, right?
Kinship hour.
Kinship hour.
Let's do it.
Okay,
We'll miss you, Zoomers.
bye everyone.
See you next week.
Bye, Jackie. Take good care.